Hi everybody, welcome back to Barcelona. My name is Dave Vellante, and we're here with the live CUBE coverage of MWC 2026. It's our 5th year covering this show from this great location we have here. Earlier this week, on Monday actually, I had the pleasure of co-hosting an executive roundtable organized by IBM. It was around bridging AI and quantum from execution to readiness. About 23 senior executives from really all over the world. And I'm really excited to have my co-host from that panel, Luq Niazi, who's the global managing partner for industries at IBM, and Gustavo Carvalho, who's with Telefónica, he's the director of customer operations and technology. Gents, welcome.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming in. We had a great session on Monday afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Really, great audience. I mean, you guys, of course, IBM, you could pull together, some heavy hitters, like Gustavo here. But Luq, let me start with you, because the title of the session was Bridging Quantum with AI. And so, we framed that, and how would you describe why these two belong in the same conversation?
Thanks, Dave. Well, as you know, AI is everywhere, it's all over the show, continues to be so, same as last year. But there's a difference between this time and last year in that, as you talk about AI at scale for the core of enterprises, increasingly we're seeing clients talk about wanting to do that within their enterprise, making sure that their AI capabilities, the data that they put, the models that they build are specific to their competitive advantage. And they're starting to think about it not being a public cloud AI capability, but more of a core enterprise capability. They're thinking about it in a sovereign way. And so that's the kind of the beginning of the bridge of the thought process.
Well, okay, but so how does that bring in quantum? Can you tie those two together?
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to AI, when we're all using it, the way that we use it personally, and whatever platforms that we use, of course that's going to be on the public cloud. But increasingly when you're dealing with complex models, dealing with the very core of an operation, you're going to want to have that data and that AI within your own sovereign capability. Now, what you do to do that is you need a sovereign technology architecture. That's going to be something that's going to connect to the cloud, connect to your on-premise capabilities, and depending on your country, you're going to need to have appropriate protection of your data and processing. So it's a sovereign hybrid cloud architecture, is what we do with our Red Hat architecture as an example. We can deploy that onto Azure, AWS, our own cloud technologies, other cloud partners, but we can set up the sovereign capability wherever we need it to, for either a country or particularly an enterprise. Now when you start to shift to what's going on in quantum, we're still in the explorative stages of quantum, but we, IBM, have got over 20 quantum installations in different parts of the world, with governments, with enterprises, and by default, they are being established in a sovereign way. So now I think about AI in a sovereign way at scale for an enterprise, and I start to think about what are the future workloads can do in non-traditional quantum computing capabilities. That's going to be a sovereign architecture. Do these things converge? That's the hypothesis.
Got it. Yeah. Gustavo, does that resonate with you? Does that align with kind of your thinking in terms of particularly the sovereign piece? We could talk what your thoughts are on quantum. I know it's more kind of in the future, but does what Luq just say kind of align with what you guys are doing at Telefónica?
Yeah, in Telefónica Global Solution, we are working to build our own architecture to develop AI. That allows us to be more agile and to speed up the use cases, implementing our process from the pre-sale to the operation. So the workflow. And now we are why we are building this own architecture. For sure, we use third-party solutions, okay, like we have Amazon Web Service that we are using, but we have own developers, we have own, I would say, use case. You don't depend on third party. That means that we identify fast use case and we can implement fast. Not only for our business, only for our needs, but also for the customer needs, okay? It's our own cloud, I would say, infrastructure, okay? And in this case, once we identify the use case that the AI can help us to bring profitability, scalability, productivity, we implement the AI solution. And the AI solution now, for us in the operation, the telco sector, is going to be the key to accelerate in scalability in terms to bringing more business and more, I would say, customer experience and efficiency in operation.
And your role as the head of Director of Customer Operations and Technology.
Yeah.
So describe that role specifically. What's your purview?
So in my purview, we are responsible for the ICT solution for the customers. So we have a complex ecosystem technology that you have to manage across the world, okay? So we have different customers in different sectors. So we have to be tailor the solutions, adapt to the customer needs, okay? So in this case, for example, the solution that applies for you is completely different than the solution that applies for you. So we must customize. It's not industrialized, okay? So that's how we link it to AI. AI helped me to adapt this solution to create agent AI for you and agent AI for you, okay, in these different aspects. And in this complex ecosystem, the global ecosystem, we have different providers, we have different customers, we are in different locations. So to manage this ecosystem, we need to develop technology that help us to make the operation much more simple to avoid this complexity that we are managing, okay? So that we are using the AI to speed up our, I would say, capability to make it more simple and to improve the customer experience. Because to operate globally is not easy. One thing is to operate in domestic country, other thing is to operate in global way. So we are, I would say, global operation, and the customer, we attend the customer where he is. If the customer is in Asia, we are in the Asia. If the customer is in America, we are in America. So this complex environment, if you don't have a good architecture, if you don't have resilient communication, resilient architecture, it's impossible to deliver a good customer experience.
Well, that's a great setup because your business is, a lot of CapEx, a lot of cost. You got cost, cost conscious, right? You've got to have great customer experience. Your cost per bit keeps coming down in terms of what you're offering customers, but your internal costs have to be controlled. You've got this complex distributed environment, so it's non-trivial. So that sort of sets up AI, and I want to talk about what Telefónica is doing in AI. I was surprised, Luq, actually, pleasantly surprised at how relatively far along folks are in that panel, or the roundtable, in the journey for AI. I'm going to come back to and ask you about that, but how would you describe where you guys are in your AI, post the AI heard around the world in November 2022?
I would say, we are not in the early stage, we are not in where we want to be, but we are in the right direction. What I mean, because the network is very complex. You can have AI implemented in access network, you have the AI implementing the core network, you have AI implementing the operation. So we have different pieces in different layers of the network, okay? In our case, that in the customer, we are using our AI in the operation. We have the operation agent already working with our technicians, okay? Used to say that we are on the loop. That's helping the technicians to take the decision. So we already have, I would say, a knowledge database developed that help the technicians to make the troubleshooting that we need before implement any solution to recover the service. We are also using the communication to the customer. We already use the AI to communicate to the vendors, our provider, and also to detect and identify patterns in our network that we use the machine learning, and this trigger to the AI agent to alert our technician in the operation. So I would say we're in the middle, depend on the component of the network that you implement. I would say in the operation, in the operation center, we are in the middle where we want to be. Because the next stage, if you ask me, the next stage is self-optimization, self-healing. We are still not there. We are on the loop. We are overseeing what the AI agent is doing. But once we get more accuracy and more efficiency in the way that they are working, we are going to the next stage. The next stage should be, next year, for example, for some cases. So I suppose that we are not in early stage, because we have our infrastructure, we have our architecture, we have our developers, and we have our use case identified, and allow us to progress fast.
So look, these guys have agents in production.
Yes.
And pretty much everybody in the room, or most anyway, did. Did that surprise you at all? And where do you think the telco industry is relative to some of the other industries that you follow?
Yeah, what I think is interesting, Dave, is that, first of all, we all know that, and we all recommended that enterprises should experiment with AI in safe places. The HR, as an example, providing HR chat to how you respond to employee concerns. That's a very prevalent use case that, of course, we have adopted a great deal at IBM, but we see it in many clients. We started to see it being applied into the IT areas. How can I do ticket resolution with the use of AI? Then how could I do cyber threat resolution through AI? And of course what Gustavo just referred to is how can we do network operations, both through assistance and then ultimately in an agentified way. So we've moved from the kind of what I would say beyond the SG&A type use cases into the core of the business. The telco, the network is the core of the business, right? So they're doing that, and many of the telcos around the table were talking in a similar way about the importance of this move towards autonomous networks and that journey with agentic resolution. But the other key industry that was in the room was we had quite a few banking clients, and as I explained, that I do think that the very nature of banking, regulated, financial data, important transactional information, both personal and company-wise, they've had to have the right governance and security frameworks for many years within their own organizations to allow them to be able to do the right things. They provide the right environment actually to go and apply AI to their problems, know your customer, AML, etc. And we're seeing that occur in many of the banks, as an example. And there were some other industries, I talked about some other ones, but that maybe are less advanced. But I do think that those industries that are structured, and that where data is key to the core of the enterprise, and where there is an appropriate level of regulation, actually have the inherent controls to be good at advancing AI in their own businesses, because they've been set up the right way. And of course, I know everyone thinks that, with the evolution of how MCP protocols work, how that will change the nature of integration between technologies. I need one MCP capability rather than many different APIs. That's going to accelerate capabilities. But it happens much more effectively if the enterprise has got good data discipline, good architecture discipline, good information discipline. And that's why I think these companies are starting to move ahead.
I like the way you described the SG&A focused use cases.
Yeah.
It's kind of like better RPA,
yeah.
Right? And now you're moving along into the more advanced AI. You also made, I think, similar points in terms of governance and catalysts for quantum.
Yeah.
That's going to be sort of a natural fit,
yeah.
Once that goes mainstream. I wonder if you could pick up on that.
Quantum is designed for those massive optimization type challenges that we can't solve naturally with traditional computing. Through our Q Network program, we have had major enterprises working with us on the application of quantum in their industries since about 2017, 2018, I seem to recall. The first kind of industries that moved into that were chemical companies, oil and gas companies, because they were looking at how can I do new molecular formulation, more product formulation that I can't do naturally through traditional compute. But we've now seen that accelerate. We're seeing, for example, banks apply quantum to trade optimizations. We're seeing transportation companies apply quantum to transportation and route logistics optimizations. If we think about the physical planning of both radio spectrums and the network spectrums, it's a type of problem that quantum can help solve. It's not unique, it goes alongside other capabilities. So these complex industries are going to need to be able to benefit from the capabilities of quantum, but it's data that they're never going to put out into the public cloud. And that's why they're going to, the technology, by the way, means it has to be kind of more sovereign in thinking, but that's why I think that there is this interesting kind of convergence between AI at scale for the enterprise and what the capabilities will start to come with this quantum capability. And where we ended up with the conversation was, look, is there such a thing as a quantum network?
Connectivity.
And what does a quantum network start to look like?
Connectivity, yes.
Yeah, what do you think,
You want to
Gustavo?
pick up on that?
Yes, it's very important that you said about the financial sector. It's going to be the first sector that we are going to boost the connectivity. The connectivity is going to be the inflection point and the more relevant search for the customer, because now we have the PQC that we are talking in the beginning of this week. You know, the PQC is the foundation to help it to be ready for the ones we have the QKD already deployed. We are talking about in 5 years ahead, but if you don't start now to prepare the foundations for the future, for this quantum, and using connectivity and combine with what the AI capabilities that we are developing, so in next 4 years, there's going to be converge. I also say that in the future, we are going to have AI, agents AI implemented in our core network, in the routers that we have, or in the radio, so that's, in the future, agent AI not going to be outside of the equipment, it's going to be embedded in the equipment, and in the quantum is going to be, I would say, our gold asset, because the connectivity is going to be relevant for the customers, because the data is throwing this connectivity, you have to protect this data. If you don't protect this data now, in the future we're going to have a risk. So we have to already say that quantum, most people think that is far away, but it's not far away. You already have some solutions that are already implemented, QKD. I think it's not in big scale, but it's already here. We cannot ignore this fact. So I think that PQC is going to be the first, we cannot ignore the PQC, and to keep an eye looking at what's going on in QKD. You know, so it's something that's going to happen. I know in 2 years we're going to see more networks deploying quantum. Yes, not a full network. Yes,
well, you have a lot on your hands with AI today, so you've got still a lot of work to do. But my MWC experience also included an analyst session today, Luke, at the IBM booth, and you said something to the effect of architecture matters. So let's unpack that a little bit. So a lot of hybrid architectures are, you got public cloud here, and you have your on-premises here, and mostly the on-premises are situations where they're trying to solve for sovereignty needs, but they don't really connect to the broader network. I'm inferring that that's changing, that you're thinking differently, that you've got actually an abstraction that spans this distributed network, and it's a single experience for your developers. Sometimes I call it, super cloud, if you will. So I wonder if you could sort of describe from an architectural perspective how you're thinking. Does quantum change that when you have to plug? Are you thinking ahead and thinking how quantum plugs into that? Don't know yet. I wonder if you could pick it up from there.
You have to split into one thing is quantum computing that can help you to be more, I'd say, optimized and the calculations, and to take decisions, because the AI is going to identify the patterns, but the quantum computing can help you to make the optimizations in network. Another thing is the quantum safe, that's the communication. So that's completely different. So the two things, I think that quantum computing is more advanced than the quantum safe in that moment. But in the future, the AI and the quantum safe is going to help us to be more efficient in terms of how to optimize the network, how we are going to be converged the network, so to help to be more resilient, to take decisions in how we want to traffic it, the optimization in the radio, the optimization in the core, optimization in the transport layer. So the quantum is going to help us to the AI to take this decision. AI is going to be the trigger to the quantum safe, and the component is to take the decision faster than now. So the convergence is going to be very fast, that we are saying.
Maybe if I can add, I think if you're applying AI at scale through your enterprise, in addition, of course, to being clear about your data strategy, you do need to have two key capabilities. You need to have governance, and having that governance capability throughout your business in terms of how you use your models, how you put data back into your models, how you make decisions off the back of those models. And of course, that governance is independent of whichever model you use, and that's an important capability. With an IBM, what's the next governance is a key capability, as an example. But that second capability is orchestration. How do I orchestrate my AI, typically in a multi-agentic capability, across my standard SaaS solutions, across my core business technology solutions that I may have built myself, and against, of course, the new capabilities that come through. So thinking about the process of orchestration and governance for AI across the enterprise is really, really key. And similarly, as Gustavo has already said, a lot of the data that's at risk, hackers have got it, right? So the thing is quantum safe protection is the first move that you get into. But this idea about how quantum will start to influence and be handled, I mean, just to give kind of ground it, in an Eastern European country, there is the first active quantum telco network. In the middle of Europe, a major country has demonstrated the ability to run quantum computing alongside digital computing over a fiber. So these experiments are starting to happen now, and people are thinking about, and of course the GSMA has standards and protocols about this, about what does a post-quantum network actually look like and how will it operate? And
one point thing that you mentioned that about the domains, no? The different agents for different use cases. One point that we are discussing now is how the agents interact between them. So there is now a conversation that we need to standardize this protocol, how the agents will talk to each other. So I can have an agent in my network, you can have an agent in your network in different domains. So it says how the agents interact. So that's the standard that we need to speed up, the standardization of this protocol, that the agents can talk with different agents. Because the agent that I develop in my network should be able to talk with your agent that in your network. So this is the key to get scale, because once we have this protocol, this standardization done and agreed between the telco sector, we are going to be able to speed up and to converge to the quantum. Because I can talk my agent with your quantum network, your agent can talk with my quantum network. So this is important that the interagent, now we have the A2A, no, that's we are talking about a protocol, but different companies are use different protocol. We need to standardize the AI interagent.
Because that's going to enable a more secure, architecture and infrastructure. Yes. That's got to be fundamental. I want to ask you guys about sort of the crown jewels within industry, within enterprises. I wrote a piece with George Gilbert about a year and a half ago. The title of the piece was Why Jamie Dimon is Sam Altman's Biggest Competitor. And the premise of the piece was that Jamie Dimon's never going to give up his data to the public LLMs. He's going to keep that internally. And he has to be very careful. He has to govern who has access to those. But those are the crown jewels of the organization. So from that standpoint, you have Telefónica has data, you have process knowledge that's proprietary to you. You don't want that leaking out. So how do you think about governing that, protecting that? Where do LLMs fit in that? Are you frontier models, small language models? How does that all sort out in your architecture?
So the first, every LLM that we developed, it's under security department, supervision. So we are using for internal process, that's not for external, let's say, communication, so that we protect the data, so the data is for our internal, I would say, needs. Okay, the first thing. We are not providing solutions that put exposure on our network for the outside. Okay, so that's every agent that you are developing the AI, it's for our internal process. So it's first that you protect your data, you protect your environment, you protect your network, okay? And even for the internal use, we have our security that we have the prompt engineer that we are going to test. If you see some vulnerability that can put in risk our data and our network, this solution is not going to in production. So we have a stress, I would say, process that before any AI, any solution that go to the productions, we have, I would say, our stamp, our security department in order to protect our data. So there is a governance, there is a committee that's taking decision which case go ahead, which case we have to stop, and once we get the all approval, it's going to be in the production. That's that way. So we have the data quality procedure, that we have the accountability. You are responsible for this AI, we are responsible for this data that we are going to use, so you are the accountability for that. So we define who is the owner, data owner of the process. And now we define also who is the, I would say, owner, AI owner. No, that's the point. So, but everything that go to the production, instead of inside, the security department must give the approval before it go to the production. Yeah. So, but the first thing, we don't expose our AI to the external customers or external market. It's internal. So the first thing, it's protected because we use it's in our environment. It's not out of our environment. I think it's a very important step before exposure. Any functionality outside, you must sure that inside we don't have any vulnerability that could cause attack or whatever in your network. You protect the customer data.
Okay. So that's sensible and practical way to approach it. When you think about across industry, this idea that AI is going to drive massive productivity improvements, allow us to scale without labor, and it's going to require us to leverage that data in a governed way, drive new value. So how do you see that playing out across industry, and what are some of the do's and don'ts that you recommend?
So first of all, I think the mass adoption of LLMs and their use by everybody is great because we're upskilling society on how to think about incorporating an AI into everything that we do. That's great, but that's not the way that you're going to run the financial system. It's not the way that you're going to run the energy system. It's not the way that you're going to run the core of a telco network. And that's why I am a strong believer that trusted base smaller models, trained on the specifics of the value pool that you're trying to create further value from, in a secure environment is absolutely key. If I can give just two examples. One is, let's take the beauty industry. It's a public example, but we know that the manufacturers of beauty products have to reformulate their products, moving away from, e.g., petrochemical bases to more sustainable bases. And that's what a company like L'Oreal is doing, is that they're taking a trusted source small language model, and they're training it on the very secrets of their formulation in order to be able to move their products from what is old technology, petrochemical bases, to new technology, sustainable bases that are going to be right for their customers. That's their crown jewels. They're never going to do that on the public cloud, as an example. Secondly, we've touched on a couple of industries, but we have taken our Granite model and we've trained it on both the TMF standard for mobile, and we've trained it on the BIAN standard for banking. What does that allow us to do? It allows us to, for those enterprises that happen to have used TMF or BIAN to define their technologies and architectures, to do AI-driven impact assessment and design on the future of their technology. And one of the things that is, often you hear folks talking about how AI is going to change the software development lifecycle. I think it's very key that it's changing the software development lifecycle. But if you've got a design, and this comes back to architecture principles, where you have good standards that you're using, and you're designing and specifying well to those standards, this is where standard-driven development, AI-driven development, can do design, development, coding, all the way through to test, both functionally and non-functionally, with very few humans in the cycle, but clearly humans in the specification and in the verification cycle. So AI applied in that kind of focused way, I think is going to make huge value. Of course, everyone is using it in the SG&A way, and they're using it in the public cloud way. Everyone's going to use SG&A public cloud, fine. But real value, real competitive advantage will come from those organizations that engineer their governance, their orchestration, their model strategy, and I think next level of competitive advantage, who are thinking ahead about what's going to come with quantum and starting to move their architectural thinking towards that. That's why I think the discipline of architecture and systems engineering back in this is going to be a key source of competitive advantage alongside the technologies. And you've heard Gustavo talking about how he's doing it in Telefónica.
So I want to end, I'll give you my sort of takeaways from the executive roundtable, and then Gustavo, I'd love to hear you, and then Luke, you can bring us home. There wasn't like an aha moment, but what there was is clarity on the sort of sequencing. Got a lot of work to do in AI, like you say, you're not early, you're not deep into it, but you're where you want to be. Quantum readiness is something that is on people's mind. They think that security obviously is an important element of that, but again, maturing the agents to where they can act on their own without the human necessarily having to be there is kind of the next step. That was kind of, was my takeaway. What did you learn in that executive roundtable?
It's a good question. That I see that AI is, each sector is in different stage. I see a different, I'd say, strategy. I saw a different strategy, and I saw that the people on the team, telco sector is in different moment in the AI solution, and other ones in the sector, finance sector, are using the AI for more oriented workflow process and for customer attention, customer experience. So there is no standard, and there is no, I would say, a right, I would say, roadmap or clue that each one is using the AI for the needs. Where's the pain? No? So I have this pain, and I can solve this pain. Perfect. So I would say that there is no everybody at the same stage. So I can see that ones in the early stage, in the sector, not the ones in the early stage in the telco sector, and we are in the middle. So depend on the sector, and then I would say the diversity that we saw in this round table was very good. I'm very optimistic that if you are able to define a little use case that allow you to go beyond and to have, you said about autonomous network, I like the expression, the autonomous service. Because autonomous service allows that the service is going to work autonomous without human intervention. So if you have autonomous network and you have an AI in the process, you combine autonomous network. If the AI in the process, in the loop, at the end you have the autonomous service. For the customer experience, is a great, because you are sure that experience for the customer. So in this case, I would say, back to the point, we should define a little case, a small case that, for example, for self-healing or self-communication, that let's see that the AI can take the decision to communicate the customer about an incident, for example. Okay, that decision can be taken by the AI. Okay, it's not, say, and you can alert the customer, okay, we are in the test, we are going to see the experience, let me know how you experience. So, it's a little case that the AI is working by itself without human intervention. Once you have it done, go to the next stage and say, now let's try to apply the solution in the network. Let's apply this in implementing the solution. So, okay, but before, define use case that not damage the service, the service, and give the customer the experience to have this autonomous service. The future is going to be the autonomous service. We are talking about autonomous network, but services. AI, autonomous network, and the quantum is going to be the quantum as a service. In the future, you are going to hear about quantum as a service.
Yeah.
I don't have doubt that.
Yeah, okay. So Luq, you had a lot of brain power in that room that you organized. Were you happy with the experience? What did you take away from that?
It's always great to get a multi-industry panel going together and seeing and sharing perspectives, and also seeing the leveling of progress of leaders in the same industry as well. I mean, what's clear is we are way beyond experimentation. Organizations are working out how to scale, not just to assist, but in an agentic way. But to do that, you've got to be purposeful. You've got to be purposeful about your architecture, you've got to be purposeful about your governance, you've got to be purposeful about the workflow and value pools that you're going after. And I think we're starting to see kind of those who are getting that clarity and have that clear vision about how they're going to do those things, and how they're designing their enterprises and their capabilities and their partners to go after that, they're going to be creating the competitive advantage of the future. And I predict that those folks will also be the folks who are starting to think about, how do I get quantum ready at the right time as well.
Excellent. Well, Gustavo and Luq, thank you so much for coming over to theCUBE in our
studio.
studio. Really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for watching. We're wrapping up day 2 here at MWC. It used to be called Mobile World Congress, but it's evolving into a much broader show. The entire computing stack is represented here, but more importantly, how to apply that technology to business advantage. That's what we talk about on theCUBE. My name is Dave Vellante, for John Furrier and the whole CUBE team. We'll be back tomorrow for our live show. Thanks for watching.